Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you've been listening to the Solo Nerd podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the founder of Zerflin Design Studio, Benjamin Young Savage, here to discuss his latest designs, specialties, and services his studio has to offer. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you for having me.
Well,
Appreciate
thank you for reaching out and joining us today. But outside my introduction, who is Benjamin Young Savage in his own words?
Sure. I'm a graphic artist. I've been doing graphic design for the past, gosh, it's 22 years now. Um, I grew up on a small Native American reservation in northern Quebec, and I came down to Baltimore after I graduated from college in 2004 and fell in love with the city, and I've been here ever since.
Pretty cool, pretty cool. So, what kind of art? I guess you already said in like graphic design, pretty much. But what kind of art does Zerflin offer? Like, what are the services and designs you specialize in?
Sure. So my work is split up in two different ways. I am a visual artist, so all of the stuff that you see on the walls behind me, that's all visual fine art that I started making, I think around 2015 or so. It's mostly like illustration, pop art based, a lot of portraiture, that kind of thing. And then I also run a design studio, which is Zerflin. And the design studio primarily focuses on branding and websites. We do a lot of posters. We do a lot of apps. We've done some publications, book publishing, those kinds of things. I'm currently working on a book cover for a client, a sci-fi author, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, we do a lot of different stuff. We have a number of people that work under the Zerflin name. It's kind of a sort of like a collective. We've got illustrators and coders and copywriters, a whole gamut of talent, and we come together for various projects.
Uh, so, where did the idea about opening your own studio come from? Like, did you work for another company before, and then you decided, hey, I'm just gonna go out on my own, and we'll just figure it out as I go? Because you may have learned some stuff from there, but opening up your own studio was completely different.
It is.
Or this is something you just went straight soon as you went out professionally. I guess from out of school and started your own professional career, you just went straight into a studio.
So I actually started the studio while I was in college. During my second year of college, I originally went to school for um, engineering. I wanted to build robots for NASA, and I switched majors my second year. And of course, like, I talked to my parents and they're like, hey, that's cool. We're proud of you. But, you should know that all your scholarships and all your funding is going to run out in 2 years. So whatever you do, make sure you get it done in 2 years, or else, your funding is going to run out. So I had to graduate and finish the entire 4-year program for the graphic arts in 2 years. And while I was, when I first started the transfer, I talked to a lot of my professors, and they're like, you got a lot of work ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to build that portfolio and do everything possible so that you can have the biggest portfolio you can. So take on as many different projects as you possibly can. So when I was sitting in these graphic design classes, they would, throw out projects. They would be like, hey, make up a company and design a business card for it. And I was like, well, instead of making up a company, let me go out and find a real company that needs business cards and turn that in for classwork and actually build, the portfolio of actual client work instead of just classwork. So I did that and started building the company from there. Had a decent sized client base by the time that I graduated, full of work that I also turned in for classwork.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got out of college, I worked a bunch of different jobs. I worked as a arts and computers teacher. through the AmeriCorps program. I worked as a photographer, and I also worked at a print shop. That was my first design job, but I still kept running the agency and doing my own side client work on the side. I just knew that there wasn't enough clientele and there wasn't enough work to actually support myself. So I kept doing the Zerflin on the side until about 2012, 2013. So for, a good 10 years, it was, me working the 9 to 5 and then coming home, staying up late, doing all the projects. Once I knew that I had enough income to support a couple of the other workers at Zerflin, then I knew that I could actually like cut out and leave the 9 to 5 and do this full time. So I've been doing this full time probably since about 2014.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, did you always know in the back of your mind while you were working, I guess, for like pretty much like a decade doing, photography jobs or computer science jobs, whatever it may be, that you can, you know, obtain money or earn money to support yourself while still working with Zerflin to get that off the ground? Did you always know in the back of your mind like it was always going to work out, or was there ever any like doubt with opening your own place?
Well, what I realized, so I built the company without any debt. We don't have any debt whatsoever. All of our bills are paid for out of a savings fund that we have. And so there's no kind of borrowing or lending that we have done, no credit cards. So everything, all of the profits pretty much get cycled back through the company, except for, paying the workers themselves. And I knew that as an idea, as a concept, the design agency would never go away because, even if I ran out of all my money, I could still find a new client, book a new job, and start it up again. So there wasn't really that fear that, it was ever going to go away. I just didn't know when exactly it was going to support me full time. And, we're in the same age bracket. We've been through 2-3 recessions. And so there was always that crazy like economic stuff that was happening in the country. And I'm like, I don't know when this is ever going to happen. But as long as I keep the idea, it's never really going to go away. And as long as I'm not going into debt, I can always do this on the side. Now, I also got jobs at various design agencies that really helped me. There was a big agency down near DC called Merrick Toll. Right before the housing market crashed, I worked for them. They did a lot of work for housing, for like condo developers and single family home builders and all that kind of stuff. And, after I stopped working at the print shop, I made it a mission to work in design departments and design agencies from then on, so that whatever 9 to 5 that I was doing, I was also educating myself on how to run an agency of my own, because I knew that, I didn't go to business school or anything like that, but so I had to learn all of this stuff hands-on and, make friends with the owners of those companies and, really pick their brain. And I was always upfront with them. I was like, listen, my goal is to own my own agency at some point. How did you get started? What did you do? How did you achieve what you have achieved? What is that kind of thing? And not as a competition kind of a thing, but as a collaborative thing. A lot of the bosses and coworkers that I've had over the years are now my own clients. A lot of them come back to me and they're like, hey, we've got this big project. We can't handle it in our agency. Can we bring some of your people on board? And we just work together.
Mm-hmm. So could you, I guess, elaborate a bit more on your creative process? So a customer comes in or they get in contact with you about a design that they want. So maybe a design for an advertisement or a portrait, or even the big thing now are NFTs. So where do you go from there when they contact you about a design?
So typically I need to break down a couple different things. I need to figure out the concept that they have, and how much creative freedom that they're going to give me, how much direction that they're going to give, and how much freedom I'm going to have. There's always that balance. I need to figure out their budget because I can't work for free. But also the budget really helps me understand how serious they are about their project. And some projects don't come with a budget. Some projects they're like, I don't even know where to start. And so I'll walk them through, various options to say, okay, well, if we get something that's this complicated, this would be the price. But, if you have something that's this complicated, we can do this. Most of the time I'm given a budget and we work out internally, what different things we can do with that budget and how we can break all those things down. Once all those things are done, that's when we go into the inspiration phase. I use Pinterest a lot, and we'll just go into this brainstorming phase where we'll just think of every kind of imagery and every kind of verbal communicative direction, anything, videos. We'll just throw it all into a pile and kind of swim in that for a while and just kind of be like, okay, like, what is the visual aesthetic that you're actually going for? What kind of mood do you want to portray? What kind of things do you want to say to your clientele and to your customers? Zerflin has always been about, telling other people's stories for them in a communicative way. And that's hard for some people when they come in as a client because they're not used to talking about their service as a story. They're, good at whatever it is that they do, whether it's being a musician or making shoes or running a cafe. Their talent is on those things. Their talent is not necessarily on, how to make the branding work perfectly or how to communicate and make sure that their clienteles are experiencing the kind of mood that they want when they walk into their establishment. They leave that kind of stuff up to us. And so what we do is we have this creative session where we just sit down and it's kind of a melding of the minds where we try to figure out, okay, what is it that you're really, really good at? And how can we tell that story to the wider world so that everybody else knows about it?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it sounds similar to when you do the portraits of particular celebrities. I read on your website about how you try to find you'll do the portrait of them, but it's a younger picture of them, maybe like in their early 20s or 30s, what have you. Just, I guess, to relate more to them and see them as a peer versus than what they grew to be. Whereas, they're more on our level, which I thought was really interesting. Is I guess it's something similar you're trying to achieve with a client, like, hey, you have to find a way of telling a story of your business or your services or your talent in order for whomever who wants to, I guess, patronize your business can connect with you in a way.
That's right. I mean, whenever there's a company or organization, whenever you have like a brick and mortar building that you have to walk into to buy something, there's always this little bit of trepidation that customers have because they don't know anything about you. They don't know, if you're going to screw them over. They don't know the quality of your product. They don't know anything about you. And so a brander and a graphic artist's job is to make that transition more seamless so that they feel comfortable walking into your space and buying and getting what they need to get, using your services, whatever it is that they need that you provide, and making sure that that marriage happens. Graphic artists are really like, that friend, that wingman who will follow you around the bar or, at the networking event and being like, y'all need to know each other. You do this and they need that and y'all need to talk. That's what we do. But we have to do it in such a way that is not going to freak out the potential client. And also, do it in a way that's honest to the person that we're representing as well. They're almost everybody that comes to us is ridiculously talented in a specific number of ways. And we have to communicate that and let the customers know that, they're welcome here and that they're going to be given really good service.
Uh-huh. Has there ever been a time where you had to reject a commission?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, all the time. Um, and there's a bunch of different ways you can reject people. Um, I I think it's important not to burn bridges. I think it's important to let people down softly. But you know, there are certain projects and clientele that don't necessarily jive with what I believe in and what I stand for.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, I'm also, in addition to, you know, making art and running a business, you know, I also do a lot of activism work. You know, you talked a little bit earlier about how you didn't really see people going out and making podcasts about what was happening in Baltimore. The same kind of thing happened to me back in 2015 when Freddie Gray was killed. um, I was seeing a lot of stuff on the news talking about what was happening in my city, and it didn't really reflect what I was hearing from my friends who were also out on the streets. And so I was like, the news isn't getting it right. There's stuff happening in the city that like they're not picking up. And so I started going out with my own camera. You know, I'm trained as a photographer, and I would go out and I would document and I would post on Twitter uh, live photojournalism every single day, being like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And you know, just doing a little bit of amateur journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, you know, I got a lot more active in the Baltimore activist community. I was involved in activism back when I was in college as well, but you know, I really got plugged into the community a lot more, just being out on the streets every single day, taking photos, meeting with people, helping people, cleaning things up, whatever. Um, and you know, started getting a lot more outspoken. Consequently, you know, I had some clients who were like, we don't really believe in all that activism stuff you're doing. We're going to take our business elsewhere. And so I was like, okay, listen, if you can't, you know, stand by the beliefs that I have, that like, you know, LGBTQ lives matter, Black lives matter, you know, that the police are really doing a lot of damage here in Baltimore, like, okay, fine, I
Mm-hmm.
will find other clients. And that was hard because, you know, it's messing with my money, it's messing with my bag. But um, ultimately, new clients came in who saw the work that I was doing and were like, we want to hire you because we actually, you get it, like you understand, you know, the stuff that's happening, and we appreciate that. We don't want to hire just some graphic designer drone who's just gonna build us whatever. We want somebody who actually understands the culture of Baltimore and the things that are happening here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because of that, and because of this graph that I made, is a T-shirt. I don't know if you can see it very well, but this graph is called "But Slavery Was So Long Ago." I was hired by a lady in Florida who would decorate her cubicle every February for Black History Month. And she got tired of her coworkers coming up and being like, hey, you know, slavery was so long ago. Why are you making such a big deal about it? Like, why can't you just let it go? And so I designed this graphic as a tattoo to go around her wrist so she could show exactly how long slavery and segregation was. Um, that ended up blowing up. It became a t-shirt graphic. Snoop has shared it. T.I., Willow, Jada have all shared it on their social media. But because of that work and because of that activism work, I started getting in different jobs. And last year, I was hired by the Baltimore City Health Department to manage all of their graphics around COVID and all of their social media. So I handled all of that stuff because the people at the health department saw this graph and were like, that's a very complicated concept that's represented very simply. And that's the kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that we need for the health department. COVID is complicated. We need it represented in graphic ways that people are going to get. And so they hired me because of that. But yeah, you know, I've turned down jobs. I remember back when remember back when Ben Carson ran for president? He
Yes.
his team actually reached out to me because they'd seen the the illustrative portraiture work that I did, and they wanted me to draw him in that style. They wanted me to do like a heroic, dun, 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 dun,
Hmm.
poster of Ben Carson, and I was like, what I did was I just priced them out. I just I gave them some astronomical price, and I was like, this is what it would cost to make this one graphic, and they're like, oh yeah, we can't afford that. I'm like, yeah, that's that's probably a good move.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I guess maybe you would have considered it before that. Maybe if you did like if they asked maybe 5 years before, because he's known as
Yeah,
this, world renowned
yeah,
surgeon. But then,
there was a rapid change. So like, he was a hero here in Baltimore. He wrote
yeah,
this book. Um, a lot of parents were, really looking up to him and, using him as an example of what can happen to, a young man growing up in Baltimore. And he had a lot of really amazing stories and a lot of really amazing stuff. And when they came to me, it was just after that. He had started his campaign and he had started to say some like really, really questionable stuff about like poverty and about, where he grew up. And like people in Baltimore were like sitting back and me like, why are you saying, like, you grew up here, like why would you even say that stuff? But he
exactly.
was already like, putting out some weird stuff. So I even by the time they contact me, I knew like, nah, I can't work with them. I can't do this project.
Uh-huh. So speaking of pricing someone out
Yeah,
as an artist, not as a businessman, because as a businessman, you could justify your charges, like give a
sure.
laundry list of it, right? But
Yes.
as an artist, how did you justify your pricing to not only your clients but to yourself? Like that you are worth that your work and the work that your employees that work there as well are worth this amount of money.
Pricing artwork is probably one of the hardest things that I've had to do because, it's just me. It's just, I'm sitting there drawing these things and producing them and trying to figure out, how much do I write on the sticker that goes on the wall in the gallery? Like, that's really, really hard to do. But what I did was I started taking it from the perspective of, running my design agency. So, breaking it down, how many hours did it take me? What did I spend on the materials making this piece? How much do I want to get paid an hour if I'm doing this kind of stuff? And that gave me some frame of reference of how to sell and price these pieces. However, I also like want the art in people's homes. Like, I don't want it sitting on my shelves and just hanging in my house. I want people to be enjoying it. So ultimately, what I decided to do was to make additions. So, for example, I've got this piece here. This is Terrell Suggs. He played for the Ravens for a while. Amazing football player, really funny dude. And I drew this by hand, and then I went over it in Illustrator. And what that gives me is a digital file. And I have this printed out on canvas and stretched around a frame. But I could make as many of these as I want. But if I made as many of these as I wanted, that would kind of like decrease the value in them a bit. So what I decided to do was make them as additions. So I only print out 10 of each piece and then they're gone forever. And I sell them by size. So this is a 16 by 16 canvas piece. And so I just add a zero and it's $160, which is not a lot. Like when you go to a gallery, like usually you're looking at stuff and it's like $3,000, $4,000 on the wall. But I'm selling 10 of these. And so 10 times 160, and that gives me roughly the price of like, what people put on the galleries. But what it also does is it makes sure that people are able to buy these who might not necessarily have a lot of money and have them in their homes. And, that's ultimately what I want. I want these things in people's homes. I don't, really care to like, it's not a money making venture. It's something that I'm doing for fun.
Yeah, and I saw on your website that it's a set price for just the drawing itself, and then you can have it printed out on the canvases, like you just said, and it's various sizes as well. And I think that works because if somebody wants a drawing, right, and they get like a digital copy of it, and then that's it, and they may just try like share it amongst whoever and put it up anywhere, but you still kind of get your money's worth from it,
Exactly.
and then printing it out is something additional that they could do.
Yep. And I've had a
So
lot of people just come to me and they're just like, can you just do my portrait because I want a better LinkedIn profile picture.
mhm.
I want something that looks creative but also professional. And I'm not going to print it out anywhere, but would you do that for me? And I'm like, sure. You shouldn't have to break your bank just to have something nice, a portrait of you that you're going to share on social media. But if you want to go ahead and like, send it to your mom and your uncle and your grandparents and be like, hey, I got this really cool portrait done of me, this is for you for Christmas, that should cost a little more, I think.
Exactly. So with, I guess, with everything that you've learned thus far, what advice would you offer to other creators that you wish someone would have told you when you first started?
Yeah, you know what I wish I'd been told? I wish I'd been told that the degree isn't worth anything.
Yeah, that's me too. I actually I actually majored in graphic design as well, and you just work so hard for it,
Yeah,
but nothing for it to really not mean anything in the
20 years of working, I've never been asked what my degree was in, never been asked where I went to school. Nobody cares. What they
no.
care about is your portfolio. That's the most important thing. So I think what I would have done differently is not paid out the nose for my education, and I would have audited classes. You can audit almost any class for free. You talk to the admissions office and you say, hey, I'm taking a break and I don't want any credit for the class, but I want to go to it. I want to audit it. And basically what they'll do is they'll register you as auditing the class. You do all the same tests and assignments as everybody else in the class, but you don't get academic credit for it. That's fine. The academic credit doesn't matter. Nobody cares about my degree. All they care about is that I know what I'm doing and that I have a portfolio to back it up. And so I think that's what I probably would have done. Still go to class, still make all the connections in the class, still learn everything that I need to learn. But, I'm still paying my student loans, and that's ridiculous.
So I mean, you still have to pay for that, right? You still have to pay to take the class, the audit? No.
Auditing it? Nope.
Oh wow, I've never heard of that
If
before.
you're audit, you can audit for free any class from any college. You can audit classes at Harvard right now. They have a program. You can sign up online, audit any class, and sit through any lecture, do all the work. You just won't get any credit for it. You'll learn. You just won't get any credit for it.
I've never heard of that ever in my entire life, and now it just makes me
Yeah,
more mad.
yeah. It's infuriating because, like, I paid somewhere in the neighborhood of, $35,000-$40,000 a year for 4 years.
Mhm.
That's the cost of a house in Baltimore. Like, come on, like.
It just makes me angry that I have a degree that I'm not using in a way. Like, I mean,
Now that's
I've
not true.
learned some stuff, but like
That's
I
not
could have
true.
learned it from
You're
YouTube.
still using your degree.
Yeah, I'm still using it, but like,
The stuff that you learned, the stuff that I learned, I'm using it every single day. Um, the technical stuff that I learned. Like I said, I had those classes where I made business cards. All those things were incredibly useful and got me to be where I am today. But if I had known that there was a less expensive way to do it, I probably would have done it.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess throughout this whole process, throughout your whole journey of everything, did it ever get overwhelming, or does it ever get overwhelming, especially like juggling the studio and then home life and then trying to have a social life, whatever you can, wherever it can fit in at? Um, like, does it ever become too much? Like, how do you typically manage your mental well-being?
Yeah, it definitely becomes too much. Um, I definitely burnt myself out. I've got two kids. I was married up until 4 years ago. Um, it was absolutely too much. And um, what made it too much were the recessions,
Mhm.
the economic downturns. I got salary cuts from my 9 to 5s. The cost of just living, the mortgage, the grocery bills, the gas, everything has gone up since I've gone out of college, and there has been no relief. And that did absolute chaos on my mental health.
Mhm.
I came from a family that kind of poo-pooed mental health. They didn't really they didn't really think it was serious. My parents would make jokes about, crazy people going to the crazy house, that kind of stuff. Like, it wasn't really something that people that I was growing up with took seriously. And so it was a long journey for me to start taking care of my own mental health and unlearning a lot about the stuff that I grew up with. And so once I finally started going to therapy, once I finally started taking care of myself, that's when, things started really balancing out for me. And I was like, oh, you mean I could have done this years ago? I could have been taking care of these things years ago. It's made me into a much better person. It's made me into someone who can see more clearly. But yeah, working this will absolutely drive you crazy. What I would recommend is setting limits for yourself. One of the things that I did when I got out of college was I never said no to any client. So whatever they asked me, whatever they needed me to do, even if I didn't know how to do it, I always said yes, and I never said no. And that wasn't always the smartest thing. It built the business, sure, but it wasn't always the smartest thing, because it meant that I was burning the midnight oil trying to figure out, a new technique in web design that I had never learned before, just so I could, do it for that client. And I learned a lot, and I was able to, then do that for other customers. But, it burnt me out so much. And because I wasn't taking care of my own mental health, and because I wasn't setting boundaries for myself, that ultimately burned me out really, really badly. And I had to suffer the consequences and, recover from that.
Yeah, I had to learn something similar to that when um I was working full time and then I started pursuing this and then my writing as well, is that I guess since ever since we were kids and then, going into school and college and whatnot, and then into our adult professional lives, is that we always have to have, we always have to be doing something. Laying around is you're considered lazy instead of
Mhm.
resting. So
Yes.
you kind of have to unlearn and then relearn
Yes.
what it is to actually live your life. Like, you can be productive, but like productivity doesn't mean actually doing anything. Like, resting can be productive
Yeah.
to what you may have to do later, and the tasks you have to do, and then in your relationships as well, because nobody wants somebody who's moody. Nobody wants to hang out with a
Yep.
moody person all the time, right? So you kind of just have to, as you said, set limits. So like with scheduling with people and, hanging out with friends and taking time out for myself as well, you kind of just have to figure it out in a way, which I've learned working for myself. Because with a 9 to 5, they kind of have all the stuff already figured out for you in a way, but that's their time that you kind of have to
Right.
do what they want you to do, versus when you go out on your own, you kind of have to fill. We learned you have to fill in the time.
Mhm.
in a way. Like it doesn't take 8 hours to do this job, but you feel like it has to in a way, right? And that's just with the work. That's not even with the stuff outside of work. As I said, like your family life and your friends
Mhm.
and taking care of yourself. So yeah, setting limits and unlearning and relearning how to really live your life.
Yep. Learning how to rest and relax was really difficult for me. I fully threw myself into that, whole hustle mentality where you
Mhm.
just like, you push through and you grind and you make it happen and it's all up to you. That's not sustainable. You can do that for a short period of time and then
Mhm.
you're going to burn out. Um, and yes, it will seem like you are getting ahead at the time because you're pushing through and you're staying up and you're making sure that you're getting everything done, but you're going to pay for that later. If you're not resting and making sure that you are balancing things out, you're absolutely going to pay for that later in terms of crashing and burning or like sleeping 14 hours on the weekend. Like you're going to burn out at some point. And so building that balance, like I bought myself a hammock. Like I didn't know how to relax at all. Like relaxing just made me kind of jumpy. I feel like, and especially since I make art, I felt like, oh, I got to be creating something. I got to be doing something. I got to be writing something. I got to be, building something. And just relaxing and um, staring at the clouds was something that like was so foreign to me and felt so wrong that I had to like relearn how to do that. The other thing that I realized was that, you know, the 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week thing that you were talking about wasn't built for the society that we live in now.
Mhm.
Um, when unions were being formed and they were fighting for the 40-hour work week and the 8-hour workday, those were built on the supposition of a patriarchal mindset where there was another adult at home taking care of the house while you were at work.
Mhm.
The man was at work, the woman was at home. And so that 40-hour work week was based on the assumption that everything else was being taken care of by another person who was not paid, taking care of the kids, making sure the house is in order, all that kind of stuff. And so, that's not the society that we live in today. We don't live in a place where, we have another adult who's just at home taking care of the house. So to expect all of us to be able to work 40 hours and also take care of a household and take care of everything else that we have to do in our lives is just not sustainable. It's not
Mhm.
reasonable. And, I think that especially during COVID, people are waking up and realizing that there's a lot of things that are broken about the system that we live in. Forcing people to come back to work when they could be doing everything remotely and at home, forcing people to be in front of their screens for 8 hours a day. That's not feasible. And, most office workers will tell you they're not even doing productive things during the majority of the time that they're at their desks in the office anyway. And so, like, I really think that we need to rethink about, how work works and how our understanding of work is just not compatible with the lives that we actually live. We need to be able to have time to rest. We need to be able to have time to clean the house. We need to have time to do the laundry and everything else that we need to do, pay the bills. And we should be paid fairly for those things. We shouldn't have to like work 3 jobs just to pay for an apartment. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. So my last question for you, Benjamin, is what is your idea of success? So I ask that because as creators, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue from our art, we're considered failures or we'll consider ourselves failures.
Yeah.
Many of us will put our dreams and projects on a back burner or give them up altogether because this career path can be highly intimidating and competitive. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
I had to reorganize what my idea of success was back in college. And that's ultimately why I switched majors. Um, I was sitting in the back of a circuits class with a bunch of my friends. The teacher was so boring. And we were passing around a sheet of paper and we were drawing little Christmas lights on it. It was right before Christmas break. and each of us would draw a Christmas light and then pass it on to the next person. It came around to me. I grabbed my pencils. I drew a little Christmas light and passed it to my friend Erica. Erica took a look at the light bulb and she's like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You just drew a Christmas light bulb and you put highlights and shading all over it. I feel like I could pick it up off the page. Why are you in this engineering class when you clearly have talents elsewhere?" So that started me thinking like, okay, maybe I do have talents elsewhere. Like, and it started the wheels turn in my head. The next class that I had was a math class, and the math teacher walked in and she just started giving us this lecture, not about math, but she was like, "Listen, if any of you are in here and you really don't love the thing that you're doing, quit. Get out of this class, go do something else, do something that you're going to love." Because she said, "Listen, if you get a job where you're doing this stuff and you hate the work that you're doing, your life is going to be awful. So find something that you really, really enjoy and go study that instead." And I really took that to heart. I realized I've been doing like little graphic design stuff for friends and for different student organizations. And I was like, I would do this for free. This is fun. I love doing this. I get energy doing this. And so ultimately, that's what led me to switch majors, because my idea of success shifted. I realized that if I graduated and got an engineering job and I wasn't paid a ridiculous amount of money, that I'd be miserable.
Mhm.
The money would offset, the money would make things better. I'm not going to lie. But, I would do graphic design no matter what I got paid, because I like it. It's fun. I love doing it. And that's also what, made the tedium of staying up late after the 9 to 5 to do my own agency worth it, because, graphic design and art was my therapy for a while before I actually got to real therapy. This was where I found peace and where I was able to calm down and relieve a lot of the stress that I was feeling, working these 9 to 5s with not a whole lot of compensation. So yeah, I love what I do. And, being able to do that day in, day out is my idea of success.
Yeah. My idea of success, I remember talking to someone, his name is Patrick Lugo, and he said it's fluid in a way. I guess it changes throughout your life. Um, yeah, money would help a lot with bills and whatnot. Wanting to do what you want to do, but being it's not worth it if you're miserable.
Yep.
Pretty much, like I left my 9 to 5, and I was making, I guess above minimum wage, which was nice. I've been working there for like 5 years, but like they had me doing all kinds of stuff, and like I said, I was miserable, having panic attacks, not wanting to go into work, and I can attend all the therapy sessions I want to, and they may try to put me on medication, but it's like eventually I'm going to have to change the environment as
Right.
well.
Exactly.
So I guess for me, it's if I'm getting anything out of it as far as like learning anything or making some type of connection with somebody, it doesn't have to pertain to work or anything like that. But like if I have some type of connection with you that would make me want to stay in a
Mhm.
way, is successful to me. And again, it doesn't have to be work, and it can be successful in life
Right.
in a way. And what I'm learning now is that there's a difference between purpose and meaning. So just because you don't have a purpose in your life, like right now, or you may never have one, doesn't mean your life doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So you kind of can just exist. Like if you want to just coast through life and it makes you happy, then that's okay. And if you want to work and to be a millionaire or billionaire and it makes you happy, then I think that's okay too.
Right.
It's just it all just depends on your life and what makes you happy. Um, so yeah, I think I'm rambling. I don't know where my thought is
No, I
going with
think
this.
I think that's good. I think that, there are different levels of success, and there are different things that apply for different areas of your life. feeling successful in your business versus feeling successful in your home life versus feeling successful with your friends, or, for me, like the activism community, or, even with my art. All of those have different metrics and different ways to measure success.
Mhm.
But, for me, ultimately, what it boils down to is it improving me? Is it helping me grow? Is it something that I love and enjoy? Is it something that I'm connecting with people? Like you said, am I connecting with cool people? Like doing this show, this is something that, I wanted to do because you seem like cool people, and I want to do, like, make that connection. But all of those different things are different measures of success. And I think the lie that we tell ourselves to be complacent sometimes is we'll put like one metric of success on a really horrible situation. So we'll be like working at this like really terrible job, that doesn't pay a whole lot, that has stupid hours, that like has you going in sitting under fluorescent lights. But then we'll be like, yeah, but I'm meeting cool people and I like who I work with, and like, yes, but you're also miserable. So like, don't use that one metric of success to justify like this entire thing. Make sure that you're looking at it from a broad angle and really, decide if that place is really edifying for you, if it's really something that's, helping you and giving you peace and helping you grow. So.
Yep. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on about Zerflin that I may have missed? Are you actually open to commissions now from new clients?
Yep. So I'm open for commissions with my artwork. I'm taking on new clients for the design agency. I just started a new branding project that I'm really excited about. We're going to be doing a brand for a fund that's going to help areas of the world that are struggling with type 1 diabetes. So we're building this infrastructure, which is going to allow communities around the world to kind of use those funds the way they need to. It's a really neat idea because a lot of nonprofits and stuff, they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, we're going to give you this amount of money to, help your community, but you have to use it in such and such a way, and you have to use a certain percentage on this and that. And this fund is not doing any of that. They're just like, you need trucks to get people medicine, buy the trucks with this money. You need to get people food so that they have nutritional meals so that their diabetes isn't as bad, buy the food. It's really cool. It's a really flexible thing. So that's going to be working on next. But yeah, hit me up. There's two different websites. There's art.zerflin.com. That is my art website. It's full of commissions and art and everything else. And then there's regular zerflin.com. That's the design agency. That's where I have all of the advertising work that I do, the branding and the websites and everything else.
All right. And I believe you have a Patreon too, right?
Yes, I have a Patreon. So the Patreon is actually what helped me get these shirts made, because back when I started, I didn't have a whole lot of money, and you need a lot of money to like start making shirts and like build an inventory and all that kind of stuff. So I have a Patreon, and what I use the Patreon for is basically an art distribution service. So when you sign up for the Patreon, based on what level you get, once a year, I'll send you all kinds of stuff that I've made that year. So you get to pick out a canvas, you get to pick out posters, you get a t-shirt in the mail, all that kind of stuff. And it's basically just a way for me to, have people subscribe and be able to send them out the latest stuff that I've made, over the past year. So yeah, I use it as like an art subscription service.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. All right. Well, again, I want to thank the founder of Zerflin Design Studio, Benjamin Young Savage, for joining us here today to discuss his latest designs, specialties, and services his studio has to offer. I highly recommend our listeners to consider giving Ben's portfolio a look on Zerflin's website, what he just described. All of Benjamin's socials and website will be listed in this episode's details for those who are interested. Again, I am KS Garner, and you have been listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.